Okay. You ready? Let's do this. You're listening to Explore Magazine's Live the Adventure podcast. This is the podcast that delves deep into the outdoors, will inspire, inform, and get you stoked to explore. And I'm your host, David Webb. Welcome to episode 24 of Explore Magazine's Live the Adventure podcast. I'm your host, David Webb. Think about the clothes you're wearing right now. Where were they made? Who made them? What are they made of? How long have you had them for? And how long do you intend to have them for? And more importantly, have you given any thought to these questions before? If you have, congratulations, you're part of the minority. They are important questions to ask. What is the impact of our clothing and apparel? Today, my guest is Rene Gauthier. He is the CEO and founder of a clothing company called Ecologyst. He has some big ideas of how we can do better when it comes to clothing and apparel, how the industry can do better, how we can buy better, buy less, keep it for longer, waste less, use natural fibers where we've become accustomed to synthetics, and a whole lot more. So he joined me from his head office, where it's a lively place. You might hear some background noise. I think a piano starts playing at one point in time, so you can tell he's busy. Let's sit back and talk sustainable clothing and the future of apparel with Rene Gauthier. Rene, thank you so much for joining me on Explore Magazine's Live the Adventure podcast.
Yeah, hey Dave, thanks for having me. It's nice being here with you today.
No worries, virtually here anyway. I wonder if you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, my name's Rene Gauthier. I'm founder and CEO of a clothing company called Ecologyst. Also have a family. We live here in Lekwungen territory, aka Victoria, BC, Canada. And wife Aki, son is Hero.
Nice. That's perfect. Ecologist with a Y instead of an I. Why is there a Y? What is ecologist?
Because ecologist with the I.com was taken.
Hey, honesty is great. It looks cool too. You know, Y's look cool. Graphically, they look cool. But seriously, what is Ecologist? The clothing company Ecologist. You are the CEO. This is your company. What is it?
One of the easiest ways to describe it would be to say it's a clothing company that actually makes clothing, which when you think about it these days, most clothing brands don't do that. They have other people often overseas making their clothing, and there in of itself is what we see as a bit of a problem in our industry, just how disconnected not only the kind of end wearers of clothing are to how a garment is made, but even the brands themselves are fairly disconnected to what it actually takes to make a clothing item these days.
So you're there in Victoria, British Columbia, in your office, your warehouse, your space that I believe you just opened last year, the new space. You are making clothing. You are running the business and you are making clothing on site. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, where I'm broadcasting from at this moment is our factory. It's also our warehouse, our distribution center, our office. So our head office is based here as well, and also a showroom. So the community here can come in. They can shop in this location and literally see clothing being made in front of them. And most people have never seen that before.
So you can just walk right in, and there's people at sewing machines. There's people cutting fabric. There's people doing that right there in your building, right, where you can see it. Right. And you can just see it as a customer. You don't have to book a tour or anything like that. You can come in and have a look.
Come in 9 to 5 during the week. That's really where you're going to see the action. But we do have it open on the weekends. But our factory team generally aren't in here on the weekends, so little less action on those days. But
fair enough. So ecologist with a Y, because ecologist with an I.com was taken, and like maybe it has nothing to do. I think it looks cool, but what does it mean, ecologist? I mean, and I know what an ecologist is, but what does it mean to you? Why is this the name of your brand?
For us, we're really focused on the impact that we have out there in the world in producing clothing. And so an ecologist really studies the interconnectedness of everything within an ecosystem. And that's how, we look at the world and the work that we do. We want to really understand everyone, everything that our work is going to impact, and bring that as a lens for the choices that we make every day as a business. So I think the name choice as well was one that we wanted to make sure it held us to a high standard as well. So are we, actually being ecologists in making these choices?
Now, how long have you been in this business?
2 decades now.
2 decades, yeah. And where are you from? You live in Victoria. Are you from Victoria?
I was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Treaty 8 territory.
Nice. And so how long have you been on the West Coast?
I moved out here in 1998, so that's 24 years now, I guess.
Born in Winnipeg, been out here 24 years. When I go and look at ecologist branding, an ecologist website, ecologist sort of, vibe, it's so West Coast. It's so connected to the coast. It's so, I'm born and raised Vancouver Island, and I live in Vancouver now. So like it immediately, I get it when I see it 100%. So I'm just wondering, what is that? Can you explain that connection to the West Coast and what that means to you, that you made it such an integral part of your branding?
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know if that's totally intentional, to be honest. I mean, we do have, ecologist customers across North America. But I think anytime that you're, in a place, and so we've got about 40 team members now, and myself and the designers on our team, we're based here in the West Coast, and so I think that naturally does come through in our designs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, and certainly not to mean that your customer is only West Coast. It's just a vibe that you're capturing, which is of course attractive. I mean, it's the reason why so many people travel to Tofino. It's the reason why people love coming out here. It's an attractive vibe. Yeah. Stepping back to your 20-year journey, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your 20 years in the clothing industry, some bullet points on where you started from and how you got to what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. I started a company called Sitka in 2002, and that was very much a Pacific Northwest inspired sort of surf, skate, outdoor brand. At the time when we started that company, there wasn't really any Pacific Northwest inspired brands out there. So, myself and my business partner at the time were avid surfers, and really the brands that we looked up to were Quicksilvers, would be one, Volcom's, Patagonia, so forth. And just wanted to create a PNW version of those brands was what we were looking to do at the time. And, so that's what we did. We created this company called Sitka, and really just followed, a model that those companies had laid out for us. But, instead of palm trees, it was Sitka trees.
No, I remember the brand very well. I had some pieces of Sitkas for sure. Yeah.
And but did production overseas as those brands do, and majority of our products at least had a blend of plastic fibers in it, and some of them were 100% nylon or polyester or so forth. So there was a pretty big pivot point for myself in my journey in the clothing industry, which came in, I think it was 2014. I was, there's been enough time now that I'm able to look back on it and say it was a fortunate accident, but I was in a head-on collision while I was on a motorcycle, so with a car, and had a very very much a real near death experience. And in fact, as I was going through this intersection and realizing that this car was drifting into my lane, all I had time for was a couple thoughts, and one of those was this is probably the end. I was really fortunate to clear the car and land about 70 feet from it, and no other traffic was around, luckily, but came to about 20 minutes later, just surrounded by ambulance and fire and police, all trying to assess if I was all right and asking me that question. But it's a very vivid memory for me of just seeing things in my life that I needed to change. And one of those was how our company at the time and myself was operating in this industry, and very much turning a blind eye to some, pretty nasty stuff. So that was, I can put it to that moment in time where it was like, all right, we're gonna do things differently going forward, and that was really the seed of Ecologist. And it didn't, these kind of changes don't happen overnight, but that was definitely the spark for starting Ecologist. And I wanted to then create a brand that built things as close as possible to where they're being sold. Wanted to get away from using any plastic fibers, petroleum-based fibers, so no polyester, no nylon, no acrylic, etc. And really wanted to start to change the overall perception of clothing as currently disposable, and move that into a place of people looking at clothing as something that can last forever, really.
When did that change begin to materialize?
Yeah, I mean, it started right away, but took quite a few years to get to where we are today as Ecologist. And it wasn't it's not like a flick of a switch and you can all of a sudden be producing clothing yourself in Victoria, BC.
No, yeah, I mean, and also you had to drop an established name brand at that point in time. Do a shift. Really, I mean, it seems to me building up from start again, essentially. Really, I mean, obviously you had your knowledge, and I'm sure you had all connections and maybe some staff or whatever. So you're not from scratch, but essentially it seems like you're starting over at this point in time.
Yeah, when I look back on it, I would say it might have actually been easier to start totally from scratch.
How so?
So we started transitioning things under the Sitka label, and really the cherry on top to the whole transition was the change of name in Ecologist. And so many people got used to what Sitka was, and I think it wasn't until that name changed that it really clicked for people that this is a totally different business, right?
Gotcha. No, I understand. Yeah, it's interesting. You were talking just a few minutes ago about petroleum products, plastics, things like that. And if you go and look at Ecologist lineup, there on your website, you'll see that it's natural fibers. That is everything you're going for is natural fibers. I wanted to talk a bit about plastics, microplastics, harmful substances in our clothing, and can you describe to some of our listeners exactly the scope of this problem and why you felt like you didn't want to be a part of it anymore?
Yeah, sure. You could probably do a whole podcast just on...
Well, maybe we will.
It's a huge problem. Right now, we're over 60% of the clothing being made out of petroleum-based fibers. So that's nylon, acrylic, polyester, spandex, lycra, these sort of fibers. And this is a Explore podcast here. I mean, the outdoor industry, that percentage goes up considerably.
Absolutely.
A lot of the more technical garments, they're generally made out of plastic. So these, and all clothing sheds little pieces of itself. Those little pieces of plastic don't biodegrade that well. And so what we're finding is that these little pieces of plastic are ending up everywhere. And they're in our drinking water, food that we eat. I saw a recent study of them being in fruit. So it's in our water, it's going up into a tree and then literally being deposited into fruit. So apples, as an example, have like a high rate of these little pieces of microplastic fibers. We've also seen recently a study finding it in human placenta. So, it is everywhere. And, I think what is both shocking but hopeful is that this has only really become a problem in the last 70 years of our history on this planet, right? If we rewind 80 years ago, we didn't have plastic clothing, right?
Yeah.
So, and why I say that that's hopeful is that we've survived on this planet without it for, tens of thousands of years, and we can do so again. And just the amount of innovation that's happened in that area since like 1950 is phenomenal. So I like to envision like what would have happened if we innovated with natural fibers from then until now, where instead of focusing things on these plastic fibers. So, I'm very hopeful that we can swing the pendulum the other way. But at the moment, it is a pretty big issue that, we're all having to deal with.
For sure. And like you mentioned, Explore Magazine, outdoor publication, outdoor gear. We've written about this a bit in the magazines, come into the forefront, the issues there. It is, however, balanced with the idea that technical gear, the technical gear that we've come to expect and perhaps even need is being made out of polyesters and plastics and things like that. And I look at Ecologyst and I'm like, okay, it's a lifestyle brand. It's got an outdoor element to it. And the sweaters and the toques and that your anorak and things like that work really well. Is it possible to go natural fibers for everything we're doing? I mean, can you shut the door on that? I don't know. Is that your hope? Is that your hope that people are going to look at someone like you and think they're guiding the way? Or is it just, you're going to do what you can in your sphere and hope to minimize the impact?
Yeah, I mean, I believe it's 100% possible that we can shut the door, as you put it, on plastic clothing and, still be able to enjoy the outdoors in the same way that we can now. As I said before, that has already happened in the past using natural fiber clothing, right? And so it's possible again. I am seeing, and we are using, some, kind of more advanced like technologies, I guess, in natural fibers, and there's more and more being developed there. Like I'm not the only one aware of this.
For sure.
I'm an optimistic person, but I am quite hopeful that we will be able to shut the door and swing back the other way, and get us to 0% new plastic clothing being created on the planet.
And what about scale in terms of using the natural fibers and things like that to scale to really clothe the planet? Or does this, if I look at what some of your ethos I see on the website, it is a lot about buying less for starters. So maybe the scale, we're already exceeding the scale that we need anyway. But I just wonder sometimes about the scale, like merino wool is a scalable product. If you can talk a little bit about that, about how that would work.
You sort of answered it there for me a bit, but we're already making way too much clothing each year. We've surpassed the 100 billion garments being made each year. So that's literally 13 pieces of clothing for each person on the planet. That's a totally unnecessary amount being created every year. So
every year too. I mean, that's staggering when you think about that.
And 3/5 of that's ending up in the landfill each year as well, which is is also
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to think that, like 13 new pieces of clothing for every man, woman, and child, and everyone on the entire planet. So you wonder, where is it all then? Because I, you know what I mean? Like, I should have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of clothing. So yeah, it's fascinating to wonder, where did it all go? And I think you just answered that, is that right into, it probably goes right from factory to landfill in some cases,
yeah,
doesn't
landfill.
it?
I mean, there's still brands that incinerate. I think public's doing a good job of calling out companies that are doing that. You know, you see that particularly on the luxury side of things, because they're very they're very reluctant to quote unquote devalue their brand by putting marking the price down on their product. So instead they'll dispose of it. So yeah, I mean, just to circle back, to me the easy answer is like, as far as scale goes, we already have enough capability to scale. We don't need to scale it any further than it already is.
So then, as a business model, I mean, maybe the biggest hurdle then is not so much changing from plastic products to natural fibers. The biggest hurdle might be convincing an entire industry that they need to make less products and sell less. How does one breach that? How does one approach that? How have you approached it?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've just made that choice. You know, we do very small runs, very small production runs. You know, so our we will every now and then put something on sale, but literally we're 98% of our products are selling at the full retail price in a given year, which, put that into context. Like, I think Nike and their own outlets are trying to get to around 60% is sold at full price, right? To me, that's a signal of how much you've overproduced. And so if you look at a lot of companies overproducing by 30 to 50%, and then often just liquidating that product and appealing to people's desire to get a hot deal on something, and that cycle goes on and on. But it will take a combo of both companies making that commitment, and also the end customer also making a commitment to choosing to buy less but higher quality products. I also think it will take a combo of regulations as well. We saw recently France put in some legislation around forget what they're calling it, like anti-waste legislation. So not allowing companies to dispose of products or incinerate. Yeah, it's not these issues that we're facing. It's not like there's no silver bullet. It's gonna take a lot of us together to solve it.
And so for you, if you're going 98% full price, and you're not overproducing, all these other major companies are. How are you pulling that off? What's different about your model that you're able to dial it in so tightly?
It's a good question. I mean, what's so different? I don't think it's it's not rocket science. Like, we literally just make that choice, right? I suppose we do speak about it as well, right? So we are educating along the way as to why we are making that choice. So we're letting our customers and others out there as well understand why this is important. We've simply just chosen not to produce. How else to put that?
That's really interesting to see that was your choice to do. You didn't overproduce. You dialed it in. You chose to educate your customer, and maybe it is that simple. Maybe it is.
If we bring a new product to market, it's done in a way where we're doing like a very small run. I mean, it's part of what's been great about having our own factory. We can literally build 30 of a new product and see how it lands with our customers. So unlike other companies out there where they might be forced into a factory minimum, that could be 1,000 of a plate. If that doesn't land, you're stuck with quite a few units. So
do you do that? Do you test with just let's check this out, let's see if there's a market for this?
Yeah. I mean, we actually recently took things a step further with we developed a puffy jacket and a puffy vest, 100% natural. So there's a wool outer, and then the inner is also wool, and then an organic cotton liner to it. We made a size run for each of our physical locations, and then that's all we made to begin with. And then when one sells, either through one of those locations or through our online store, triggers an order. So there's literally like no waste in the production here. This is a test that we're doing to try to achieve true made to order, just in time production in our factory right now.
And because you have the factory on site, at least you can tighten up the lead times there, so it's not super long for people
absolutely.
as well, right?
I think right now we're running around a week and a half on that program, where we can get the order in and then deliver it to somebody.
Do you do custom, or is that something that you would consider? Because it seems like you would have the capability for
it. We don't advertise that out there. Like going above and beyond for people, and if someone wants a particular alteration to a product that we make, then we're happy to do that. We have a lifetime repairs program, so we get a lot of interesting products coming back, and sometimes people mistake us for other brands and send those to us, and we'll repair those for them as well, just to go above and beyond for our customers.
Lifetime repairs. Was that part of your model right out of the gate for Ecologist?
Yeah, it's been there since at least the Ecologist brand has come to be. Yeah.
People ship it back if something's happened and you'll repair it?
Yeah, I just want to take full responsibility for the products that we're putting out there in the world. And, we know if a person can, give a second life to an existing product, we're going to save about 80% on the carbon footprint versus them having to buy a new one.
Yeah, so there's a lot of value built in here. And I want to talk about that for a minute. Value is something that's really interesting to me as I deal with it with our magazine, with our advertising clients, in general life. And I sometimes feel that in the world of apparel and fast fashion, our idea of value has been skewed a little bit, in that perhaps value is seen as, it's a great value. This is really cheap. It's a $20 shirt. It's a $15 shirt. There's a lot of value there or something like that. But you've gone the other way. Your products are a higher price point. The toque, our listeners can't see that I believe you're wearing right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's about a $95 toque.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
That's right.
And, one of what I consider to be sort of, your signature item that you have right now is a fisherman's sweater. And that's just shy of $400. Right?
That's right.
So when you're looking at that, if you're trying to woo someone away from the fast fashion market, how do you convey that value to someone and say, listen, this is sustainably made. How do you get that across for someone who might be thinking that a toque should be $15 and a sweater should be $60?
It can depend who you're speaking to exactly, but generally we have a conversation around cost per wear. So we talk about that. Hey, this is a piece that you're buying, for your lifetime, or at least you're going to be able to, put this piece into a thrift shop or hand it down to a relative or son or daughter or so forth. And that if you actually do the math on cost per wear, this versus say something you might acquire at a fast fashion company, yes, it's a bit more of an investment up front. But the cost per wear is going to be much lower than, say that sweater that you need to buy every single year.
And if someone would come into your shop, is that part of the educational experience there, really getting that? Because on the website, you'd have to find it yourself. It is sort of part of your branding, and you can see that. But, do you offer sort of an educational deal at your bricks and mortar shop?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, feedback that we get frequently from our customers is just, how informative our team members are. And they have a big responsibility at our company, deliver that education to people, and, to do it in a way that's not, overly preachy. We want to come in and, we respect that, there's times where, somebody would love to purchase the $400 sweater, but that's not in the cards today for, whatever reason. And so, we need to be respectful of that as well. Right. So, we're not overly preachy about it. We like to, provide people the knowledge, and, they can make their own choices from there.
And where does the inspiration come from a lot of these pieces that you're making, in terms of not only the styles, but the fabrics used and the materials used, how does that come together?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at fabric choice, a lot of it comes down to the amount of constraints we put on ourselves, right? So we have
Fair enough.
some
Yeah.
some pretty high standards that our design team need to follow. So it really narrows things down quickly what we actually can use to make our garments. You know, they need certain certifications. They obviously can't be made out of any petroleum-based fibers. The list sort of goes on and on. So that narrows things quite quickly for us.
And so, are you making everything that you sell on site, or do you have partners that you work with as well?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, we do about 30% ourselves in our own factory, and then we do use some partner factories. Most of those are in Canada, and we do work with one in the US right now.
How did you choose them? Because they would have to align with your goals too. So was that a tough process?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's taken quite a bit of time to develop, and of course the landscape here for manufacturing clothing isn't what it once was, or isn't anywhere near the capacity that say a country like China would have. But yeah, so it took a while to find the right partners for us that are aligned with our values, and that have owners and team members in the company that are looking to pull off similar things in our industry.
Did your values specifically preclude you from going overseas? Because I know I've talked to some other apparel manufacturers that found overseas factories that they feel are quite transparent and aligned with their goals. And so you say you have all Canadian except for one American, but if you need to scale or if you were growing at an exponential pace, I mean, would it preclude you from going overseas? Maybe because of carbon footprint of shipping, things like that, or is that something that you could foresee?
Yeah. So for us, it comes down to we want to make things as close as possible to where they're being sold, where the majority of our sales are at the moment are in Canada, so about 80%, and then 12% in the US, and then beyond that is international. So if we look down the road and we're like, wow, 30% of our sales are shifting into China, say as example, then we would want to be producing those goods there. So
right, gotcha.
We're not saying we're anti like a particular country like any means. I do agree that you could make things and keep the carbon footprint very low, like producing in China for that market, right? But it just doesn't make sense once you start shipping that.
Yeah, so it's local production wherever the local going to be as local as possible. So yeah, that's an interesting. If you had a big market in Denmark, you might have a shop like that in Denmark, right?
And
so yeah,
we are looking to grow. Right now we're at 30% producing ourselves, and we are working towards growing that as well. And so opening up some other of these, what we would call a manufacturer to consumer locations, or M2C locations. So we are looking to put these in other parts of North America, so that we can, no matter where you are, we can say, hey, it's made right here.
So you'd have to have a whole bunch of different tags on your clothing, right? It would be like made wherever it was made. It would be the same piece of clothing, but it would say it was made somewhere else. I wanted to branch off a little bit into something else I've found as researching your brand is ecologist films and some of the art projects that you've been working on. I wonder if you could explain to our listeners what that is and how that fits into your brand.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, ecologist films. They make films, documentaries in sort of environmental and social impact side of things. We also do some, shorter films as well, but generally we'll be producing one larger documentary per year. We've recently brought one to life called Before They Fall, which is a documentary on old growth forests and the land back movement here in BC. So that this film has screened at the Whistler Mountain Film Festival, and we'll be going into the Vancouver International Mountain Film Festival, Sedona Film Festival. So it basically what I'm saying is it's doing the film fest circuit right now. You can't yet watch it anywhere online, but once it finishes the film fest circuit, we'll look to place it with one of the video on demand companies. But I think just in how that relates to the clothing side of things is we got a lot of very passionate people here at ecologyst, very passionate about the environment, and sometimes that's really easy to take that energy and to put it into our clothing work, and other times it's not. And so that's where we're able to tackle some more unique projects or passion projects, things that we're really that are really dear to our hearts. So, old growth forests in British Columbia, of which there's very few remaining, is one of those topics. And so that's why we, dedicated some time to that particular documentary. It's also, I guess when I think of brands and then, how maybe you decide to spend your marketing budget, for us, we like to think of it as an investment, and ideally we can do some good out there in the world with that investment, and not give it all to Google and Facebook.
Supporting local artists too, probably as well, in the creation of it, beyond just members of your staff as well.
Yeah,
Would that be part
absolutely.
of it as well?
Yeah, it's definitely supporting the community. It's giving some people a platform they may not otherwise be provided to get their voice out there. So yeah, 100%.
So come on, you're making documentaries about old growth forests, and you're supporting artists, and you're making toques, and you're telling me you're not West Coast. Come on, see what this is what I'm talking about. This is a West Coast vibe all the way through, right?
Yeah, but I guess it just comes through naturally. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. It feels natural. It does feel natural. Just also it and maybe it's my own bias as a West Coaster. I look at that and I see something I strongly recognize in it. Maybe someone who wears your sweater from Toronto doesn't see that as much. They see something else they recognize. Sure. It could be as well, So where are you going from here? What's 5 years? What's 10 years looking like?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Nice question. Yeah. Bring this model, and like whether it's us doing it or we inspired other companies to do it. I do want to bring this across North America, and in the next 5 years, I want the people wearing clothing on this planet. This is one of the three things that we actually need as humans, right? There's so much stuff out there, and so many apps and so forth, but it's just noise to me. But I just really want people to appreciate how much love and like craftsmanship and work and so forth goes into the pieces of clothing that we wear every day. And I think if in 10 years we're in a place that the majority of the population agrees that clothing is no longer something that we view as disposable, then I think we will have, on the clothing side at least, achieved, the UN Sustainable Development Goal. Like, let's keep this thing under that 1.5 degrees. So yeah, I meant, that's a vision, and it's a hope as well. Something though I think is totally possible for us to achieve.
I like it for sure. I think you make some very good points there, and I don't exactly know when clothing became so disposable, but I think there is a movement now that I feel beyond you and beyond that is really starting to push back quite a bit strongly, and so 10 years to me doesn't sound unreasonable to have that bit more solidified and bit more widely agreed upon and acted upon. I know a lot of people agree upon it, but whether or not they act upon it, right? All right. So where can we find you? Where can we find you? You're in Victoria. You're online. at
Yeah,
ecologyst
that's
with a
right.
y.com.
We also have a location up in Whistler, BC, but that's where you can find us right now.
I recommend the everyone checking out the website for sure, and click on some of your social media from there too. The Instagram is beautiful, a lot of beautiful stuff on there as well, and a lot of great YouTube videos. I was on your YouTube channel just this morning, and there's a lot on there, and it's really nice to scroll through. Yeah,
that's where you'll find the majority of our films that have been released for a little while now.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. That was really enlightening. I really appreciated your candor and enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Yeah, it's been a real treat. Appreciate you having me on.
That's a lot to think about. Like Rene says, clothing is one of our 3 needs. Food and shelter, the other 2, I suppose. And as an outdoor enthusiast, I'm becoming more acutely aware of the toxins and plastics that I rely on every day to shield me from the cold and the wet and the rocks and the brambles. Can they be replaced with natural fibers? Was Gore-Tex and ripstop nylon a mistake? I know we can do better, and I'm liking what Rene's thinking. If nothing else, it's given us a lot to think about. And if you don't know Ecologist yet, go over to ecologyst with a y.com. Some really nice stuff there. So thanks for tuning in today. I'm David Webb, and hey, live the adventure.